Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for coming. It's our pleasure to host you today. My name is Mehmet Tulbek. I'm the president of the Saskatchewan Food Industry Development Center. Food Center is a founding member of the Prairie Food Link, and it's our pleasure to host you today at this event. Just a couple of notes from Joanne passed to me, and I'd like to thank Joanne and Kendra for all this organization, everything, putting this all together. A couple of housekeeping items. The washrooms are both in the back corner. Hope, like all the snacks and the beverages, everything you enjoyed and everything is working well. Some of those later, basically through the Q&A, we can go through some of those as well. The panel discussion and the Q&A are being recorded, and they will be made available to all the FEAD members and the Prairie Food Link members, as well as being shared on the Prairie Food Link website. So with that, before I do the introduction, I'd like to start with a land acknowledgement. I'd like to acknowledge that we are on Treaty 6 territory and homeland of the Métis. Let's take a minute to pay our respects to the First Nations and Métis people who have deep roots in this rich agricultural land that we call home. We strive to rebuild bridges and reaffirm our relationship with one another. With that, I'd like to invite Ms. Kendra Wack. Kendra is the Executive Director of Female Entrepreneurs in Agri-Food Development Program, FEAD program. And Kendra will be the moderator of the panel. And I'd like to introduce Kendra, and then Kendra will be doing all the introductions further. Thank you so much, and enjoy the program.
Thank you to everybody for coming out today. I know it's February break, so I know that a lot of you are driving kids at home. Sacrificing holidays, and the time you've taken out of your schedules to come here today is greatly appreciated. As a note, we have 2 FEAD member boxes up for raffle. So if you go to your tables, if you just sign up through here, you'll be entered to it. And yeah, we'll get the panel up. With the panel, I have Emma Laing from the Food Center. I don't know where Emma ran away to. Oh, there you are. We have Amy Bond from Parkerview Kombucha, Heather Huenison from Naturally Amped, and Kara Friesen from Cultured Bites. So a really great panel today from all across the ecosystem, from nonprofit to academia, to business, to established entrepreneurs, to just beginning their journey. So I'm excited for the question period as well. Feel free to ask away. We're going to ask, though, that if you have a question, you speak into the mic at the back there. Okay. Come on up. Come on up, guys. Okay.
I'll bring it in.
We'll see if I still have my teacher voice.
Yeah. Stay on this chair.
Okay, so we'll maybe start closest to me. Heather, do you want to introduce yourself and tell us how you got into the world of fermented food and entrepreneurship? Because you've had quite the journey.
I could say I have had quite the journey. I'm Heather Huenison. I'm one half of the dynamic duo of Naturally Amped. My background, for those of you that are not familiar with our stuff, our Naturally Amped products are naturally fermented foods. Our claim to fame is our dill pickle kraut. If you have happened to come across it at Co-op or Safeway, lots of people love it. It's a sauerkraut converter for a lot of people with kraut PTSD. So it's nice and crunchy and naturally fermented, which is a big growing category. So how we kind of got into fermented foods, it's a bit of a long story short, I guess, is it kind of happened by accident. Sanda and I met doing our MBA here at Edwards. We're both recovering moms, I guess you could say. She likes to say that she's a recovering academic. I am a recovering engineer, I guess. So we had kids. Long story short, we were revamping our careers by doing our MBAs, trying to get into more regular hours, haha. And we started a consulting firm to help out with small businesses and Naturally Amped was one of the ones that kind of came up and wanted some help with some stuff. And one thing led to another, and we actually ended up taking over the business when the previous owner had some health problems. And since then, it's pretty much taken over our lives. And it's been fun. It's really interesting to learn about. Sanda has a background in science, as well as her cultural background has a lot to do with fermentation. So I'm just kind of I like to call myself kind of the Robin to her Batman, where I just kind of go along for the ride, and I'm there for, laughs and giggles and all kinds of fun stuff. But that's basically me in a nutshell.
And if you want to get converted today, there's some dill pickle kraut right over here. Next we have Kara Friesen. So Kara has a really cool story and has a really fantastic farm to fork story. Kara, can you tell the room a little bit about what got you here?
Sure, yeah. Well, I guess then I should start with, I grew up on a farm in southern Saskatchewan. So I'm a farm girl who grew up learning about food and how to grow it. And when I went to university, I wanted to learn about nutrition as well. So I remember my first kind of idea about what fermentation was about, or why it interested me, was when someone came to my class, in my undergrad nutrition class, and talked to me about probiotics and how they had impacted some of her patients and had changed some kids' lives because they had IBS and no other treatment actually worked. But when she used probiotics, she saw actual changes in their condition. And that just sparked an interest in me that kind of led me into seeing that as a cool research opportunity. So when I decided to do my master's, I chose to do it in the area of fermentation and plant proteins, kind of marrying the two, understanding my nutrition background as well as my farming background. And at the end of my master's, I'm close to the end now, I got an opportunity to do an incubator program on campus where they really pushed us to do customer discovery and really understanding, does my research actually matter and does it solve a real problem? And as I was talking to people in the community, I really saw just a desire to understand more about fermentation, and also just people are looking for products that are healthy and wholesome. And so when I talked to them about tempeh and the possibility of a high protein product like tempeh made from local ingredients, I saw that there was actually a need for a product like that. And so that really pushed me to look into entrepreneurship and starting a business around my research and tempeh here in Saskatchewan. So that's a bit of my journey so far.
We are very excited for Kara to get her research commercialized. We're cheering her on nice and loudly. Amy, you have had a long journey in entrepreneurship. You come from a very entrepreneurial family and a very entrepreneurial background, and you, as a family unit, are very involved in beverages and entrepreneurism. Tell me a little bit about you, what got you here today, how you kind of were the first, I would like to say, trailblazer in Saskatchewan. I mean, really paving the path for kombucha.
Thanks. Wow. My name's Amy Kaban. I own and operate Parkerview Brews Kombucha with my husband here in Saskatoon. It's so nice to see everyone enjoying some kombucha here. We love to see that. We started this company back in 2018 as sort of a pet project. We loved kombucha. We started brewing it at home to try to make kombucha that we liked. At the time in grocery stores, it was still very much like a niche, a fringe product that you'd find sort of tucked away back in the corner of the grocery store in a tiny area called natural foods, if they had a natural foods section. So we started brewing it at home. And I should say my husband, his background is in science, fermentation, plant breeding. My background is in none of those things. I have a business background with a marketing major. And he had become familiar with fermentation with his work at Crossmount Cider Company. So if you've ever had those ciders, those are his babies, those are his recipes. And then I lured him away from that to start this business. And it's been really great. So in 2018, we started it. We tried it out at a farmer's market in Saskatoon, hoping that some people would try it. It was very well received by people here in Saskatoon. Fast forward a bit to 2019, right before COVID, we were able to get into grocery stores, which allowed us to ride the wave of that pandemic. At the time, grocery stores were kind of the safest place to be for a lot of people. And that's where our product was discovered. And with every grocery account that we were able to secure, we used that to leverage more and more grocers. So today, we're in 2024. We are in over 250 stores across Saskatchewan. We're looking at expanding outside of the province at this point. And about 5 months ago, we transitioned from glass to aluminum cans, which has been a game changer for our business. And I'll talk a bit more about that later. But it's allowed us to fulfill our orders and essentially grow our business like never before.
Amazing. Emma and I work together over at the food center. We're neighbors. So sometimes she tells me to quiet down because we like to party over in the food corner. Emma, you have had a very interesting career journey where you've navigated industry, now navigating nonprofits. You're really coaching people through administering the PDP program on best moves for small businesses. Tell me about your journey here, how you like to support businesses, and what you see next.
Yeah, sure. So I'm Emma Laing. I work at the Sask Food Center. My title is Project and Program Specialist. And so unlike the rest of the panel members here, I'm not an entrepreneur, but I get to work with them quite often, which is really exciting. My background is technical. I've got my master's in food science here from the U of S, and I branched out immediately from school into the industry. I worked as a project manager in sales for plant-based ingredient company AGT Foods. So that was really exciting. I got tossed into the food industry world, and I got to meet with a lot of different clients of very different sizes of bringing different plant foods to the market. I was with them for about 3 years, and then I transitioned over to the food center. I've been here for about 2 years, and it's very different, but it's very exciting. I've really enjoyed, again, helping entrepreneurs, helping companies bring innovations forward to market, but from a not-for-profit perspective. So it's really fun to be able to teach entrepreneurs or help them walk through some of those issues where they're thinking about where they're starting in their business, but being able to kind of give that zoom back outlook of what else is happening in the industry and other things that you can think of and leverage on as you're going through the journey. And I do that through, as Kendra said, some funding support, a lot of pathfinding, leveraging the ecosystem of the food center to be able to make those connections and help everybody so we can move forward as an industry here in the province. So I'm excited to be here.
I'm not going to give you a break because the first question is going to come over to you.
Okay.
Emma, working at the intersection, you really work at an intersection of food science, processing, industry, business trends. You have a lot of files come across your desk. You see a lot of food processing. You work with clients right here at home, but you also work with clients internationally. Can you tell me how you personally like to identify food trends? And what you see some of the food trends coming up in the next 1 to 2 to 5 years?
Yeah, for sure. So for identifying trends, we're very fortunate at the food center to have such a breadth of clients. We work under confidentiality and IP, so we don't ever get to share out those exciting things about the clients, but we do get the backside to kind of understand what's moving in the market, what's being published in those marketing or marketing, that's not the right term, the e-newsletters by Food Dive or Food Business News that are mostly American publications, and how we're seeing those transition into actual industry and how industry is adopting them. So that's one really unique way that we get to identify what's being put out there and what's actually coming to market from real life entrepreneurs. And along that as well as we work closely with other ecosystem partners. So like FEAD. FEAD does a lot of work in the business and the entrepreneurial side of things. And then we also get to work with organizations like CFIN that's going across the country, Egg West Bio, Protein Industries Canada, all these ecosystem members, and we get to kind of really collaborate and work together and neat things like the Prairie Food Link, where we can all come together and understand what are entrepreneurs working on, what are established companies working on, what are government organizations looking towards, and you can really kind of pull and understand where those trends are coming and how they're actually gonna move through into market. And then the other thing that I like to do for trend identification is working in public programs specific to fermentation. In 2023 last year, we wrapped up a Protein Industries Canada project that was looking at ecosystem development and mapping for fermentation specifically in Canada. So that was a really unique experience to be able to work with local fermentation entrepreneurs and established scientists and established businesses in fermentation, but then also leveraging our global partners out. We had a webinar series with scientists and business owners in Israel, in Europe, to understand how the global fermentation market is coming along as well. And lastly, I would say specific trends. That's a big one. Sustainability is a big one, especially for fermentation. And sustainability is a word that gets tossed around a lot, but fermentation fits really nicely in here because it's sustainable from a environmental perspective, from a health perspective, all of these things. And that is kind of what is being seen across the board in general with the food industry. And with that, we see the functional benefits. We see that popping up across the board for all different types of foods, but specifically in fermentation, it's a natural processing, specifically in your foods as well, and how that can help with the microbiome, with hormone health, all these different types of things that consumers are wanting more from their food, but they want less ingredients, they want less processing steps, they want to see the story, they want to see how it ties back into sustainability from environmental and from a health perspective. And the last thing is huge across the board. I would say the next trend would be local, but local is I saw a quote the other day that said local goes global. So consumers across the board are more likely to pick something that they can understand the local origin story of a product, even if it is a global product. So if you're able to really establish that story and that branding and that messaging, whether it's through technology or just through your marketing, that can really push you forward in a big way.
Amazing. Thank you. Kara, I think that you are at a very interesting point in coming to market that I think Amy was potentially at when she came to market in 2018, where you're catching this great wave of this local piece, of the sustainability piece, of the functional nutrients piece in your product. As you kind of dive toward you're really diving. You are diving into your entrepreneurial journey and toward it, both feed in. I've never really seen an entrepreneur dive so hard to feed in, and I'm so excited to see what you do from this. I know that you worked a lot with Sigma and Tate and the Edwards School, supporting kind of all of these pieces. Tell me what kind of marketing strategies that you've learned about that you're planning on taking to market with your product as a new entrepreneur.
Sure, yeah. Yeah, so it really has. I've had a lot of good support. Being on campus has been really instrumental in my journey. Being a part of Sigma and having good mentors that really taught me about what it means to be an entrepreneur, and that a founder, or I guess a business, is only as good as its founder. And in Sigma, they really built into us about that, like build your business acumen, learn what it means to be an entrepreneur. There are actual steps to take. You don't have to feel like you're floundering. Sometimes we do anyway, but I think I really got that confidence in knowing that there are steps that I can take. And so when I think about taking this to market, right now my goal or my business plan is to go directly to the consumer. So as a part of Sigma, we had a mini trade show in September, and there I served example products, so pieces of tempeh of what I have made, and offered it just to anyone who was there and asked for their feedback. It's just a few questions about their taste and texture and what they thought, and also an opportunity to sign up to see if they were willing to be a repeat customer, if they would pay for a product like that. And so just going directly to the consumer, I've found has been instrumental in really getting my name out there, really learning the ecosystem and what it means to be an entrepreneur, and then getting that feedback direct from the people who will eat it and buy it. So for now, that is my plan, to go direct to consumers. And all the time I've been joining other places where I can learn about business. So I'm in the FEAD program Farm to Fork right now, learning specifically about food business and what that entails. I did another kind of a accelerator program out of Alberta that really helped me to understand my go-to-market strategy and helped me to cement that. So I'm just trying to take in all I can and then put that into action. So this term, I've been doing a lot of looking for funding options. So free funding, I've been doing pitch competitions and business competitions, that sort of thing, just to use the ecosystem that I'm in. I am still a student, so I've been leveraging those options and really getting my name out there, meeting people in the community, and just really learning what it means to be a part of the business community. So I think that's hopefully answering your question. That's kind of what I've been doing lately.
Amazing. Yeah, I am so excited because you're prepping yourself and you're building your tool belt so strongly. I'm really excited to see what comes out of Cultured Bites. Heather, you are incredibly strategic. Every time I talk to you, she's an engineer, she has an MBA. About as much strategy and as many Excel spreadsheets as you can find out of this woman, I'm sure. How do you approach strategic decision making when it comes to scaling a product like yours? Because your product is not an easy scale. It's not up your recipe, turn up the machines, go.
No, it's not an easy scale. And that is where we have, I think, found our niche a little bit in the fact that we are able to take that strategically and really look at it and go, where are the problems and what are we looking at? And so that's why you'll find like a lot of, particularly kraut and kimchi, local brands they fall apart when they try to scale because it's not an easy process. So I guess for us, Sand and I, when we really got into this, we looked at what do we really want to do with this. And for both of us are moms. We are passionate about sustainability, passionate about local business. That's why we started our local business consulting and whatnot. So we have our passions, and we really wanted to make sure that our passions really fit in with Naturally Amped. So for us, we make sure that there is never any compromise on certain variables, as I like to call it. These are our constrictions. Those are our boundaries. We're never going to waver on those. And that is, we make sure that our stuff comes as locally as possible. It's always whole ingredients. It's something we as moms would really like to find on the grocery shelf and not feel like you have to have a PhD in order to be able to find something healthy for your kids or yourself. It seems like every time you go to the grocery store, somebody tells you, oh, did you hear that cereal is not good for your kids now? You gave it to them all through the time you were growing up, but you're terrible. So
Mom guilt. We love a good mom guilt marketing strategy.
Yes. So yes, we feel the mom guilt. I have always joked. I'm like, we should just have a marketing strategy where you take like a picture of craft dinner because that is the kind of day you're having, and you just put some kraut on top of it and you go, good enough, healthy enough. Congratulations, it's not a total disaster. Because that for us is really, we wanted to make sure that there was something that people could go to, that it's really easy to incorporate in your diet. It's not something that you have to hold your nose and get it down, and because someone told you that you have to do it. Like, you're not gonna do that. I'm definitely not gonna do that. Our kids are not gonna do that. So for like all our line of krauts and kimchi, they're all strategically done. One, to have benefits. So each of the benefits that are in there, like the ingredients that are in there, have added benefits to you. So for example, like our carrot ginger one has cabbage with carrots and ginger. And that's it. Like, that's all that's in there. And then the salt, of course. But the carrots and the ginger are in there to help you with inflammation and different problems that you might be having. And all of our stuff is like that. We are science-based geeks. So we totally geek out on this stuff, and we find stuff that we want to put in, and it's really, really easy to sneak it into your kids' stuff, or sneak it in on your husband, or sneak it in on yourself. It's really, really easy to do that way. You really don't need a lot, but we find people get kind of addicted to it, which is we're like rah about. But so there is. But the whole ingredients, making sure all of our stuff comes from local farms. We actually partner with Spring Creek. I don't know if anybody's familiar with Spring Creek, but they're lovely people. They also have kids, so we chat about kids and farming and all the craziness and whatnot. So we try to make sure all of our stuff comes as local as possible, and then we make sure that our stuff is on trend in terms of what the science is backing up. Santa loves to geek out on research papers. I love to geek out on Excel spreadsheets. So between the two of us, we geek out on stuff and we find whatever we're happy with. So in terms of scaling up, the big thing for us has been, that has been really my strong suit in terms of what I bring to the table. For those of you maybe not familiar with, we talk about running very lean. I joke that we run almost a little too lean and I'm going to have major meltdown at one point, but we try really, really hard to make sure that all of our stuff that is coming in is processed as quickly as possible. It doesn't stay long in our fridge, it goes out. And it's always done in a very clean, very straightforward process. We make sure that all of our stuff is what we can be proud of, and we're not willing to really compromise on that. Whether or not we'll make money doing that, we'll see. But so it's been tough to say the least in terms of trying to scale it up. I mean, fermentation has its own personality, I guess you could say. So it's been a learning curve that way, but we are very, very dedicated to making sure that only the best stuff comes out of our facility, and we're super proud of it. So
Amazing. That's what I love about not just female businesses, but small businesses, is that there's always such heart in what they do, and they definitely push to feed your family like they're feeding their own. Amy, you have kind of, well, and I think you're just maybe catching a breath 5 months later. You've kind of hiccuped over a lot of these scaling processes, and now you're looking to, not just Saskatchewan, you're looking to the Canadian market, maybe even, I don't know if you're looking into the US market, but that's usually the next step, is we look at the regional expansion and then the international expansion. How have you found the process of optimizing your systems and your scaling through your business to make sure that, I mean, like we were talking earlier, is that you can't just store kombucha in a garage? How have you really honed that process in to make sure that your kombucha it's so good? There's some over here. If you guys haven't had any yet, please do, to make sure that it's always that great.
Yeah, when we transitioned from glass to cans, even before that, when we transitioned from growlers to glass vessels, it was really about, we were getting our feet wet with systemizing things. And systemizing something that's fermented is not easy because it is alive. If it's hot outside in the summer, things ferment faster. If the cooler breaks down, if in winter, there's so many aspects and there's so many different types of yeast that can exist. So it was really about systematizing at the beginning. And then when we switched just 5 months ago, again, it was really trying to optimize every aspect. We had to make sure the grocery shelves weren't empty during the transition, right? We had to make sure that we weren't losing any facings or shelf space, because the grocery world, which I learned really quickly, is kind of like a dog-eat-dog world, where it's this little subculture that you enter and everyone is fighting for a spot on that shelf. In Saskatchewan, we have a local program where you don't have to pay to play, or you have to rent that shelf that you're on, but you have to keep it filled, and it's your responsibility as a small business person to make sure it's filled. And with the fermented product, you have to make sure that there aren't expired products that are on the shelf either. Think about it next time you're in a grocery store, you'll see the Frito-Lay person or the Pepsi person walking around. They're always there. They have so many facings, they have to take care of those things. It's not the responsibility of the grocer, right? There's thousands of SKUs in there for them to take care of. So what was I talking about? Oh yeah, systematizing,
Yeah,
and
just the
optimizing.
scaling process that you've jumped
Yeah.
through. I find that there's always this. So Kara's kind of going through that first step of scaling. Heather's kind of gone there, but now the demand's happening again. But you've kind of busted through that
Yes.
next step.
And really I guess the piece of advice that we use a lot is just the data tells you everything. So if you're tracking your sales, the data will tell you what flavor sells the best, what is the worst. Mind you, when we switched to cans, we base all of our orders for cans that come on these huge pallets, we base it on our previous sales. But little did we know that with the new packaging and the look, that the sales would actually shift and change. We couldn't sell ginger pear for the life of us before, and now it's become a #1 seller alongside peach mango, which we would have never thought. So it's really about the data and looking at what sells, what's not selling. And in terms of something that is fermented and alive, the biggest challenge is distribution, hands down, especially in Saskatchewan, a place that is so immense, but everything is so far apart. Finding a cold distributor in Saskatchewan is very, very difficult. And with kombucha, you have to transport it cold. You could transport it warm, but when a fermented product like kombucha becomes warm, things start to get sciencey, I guess, right? The yeast is always something that we're trying to control. So once it becomes too hot, then you have carbonation issues. Your sugar is going down, and you have pressure increasing in a vessel. So to keep it cold and to educate the receiver to put it in the cooler, the end user, the consumer, to pop it in the fridge when they get home. Don't leave it in the backseat of the car. You can have a surprise later, things like that. So, that refrigeration aspect is the main thing that we use to ensure the quality at the end of the day. So if we're going to be shipping this to Vancouver or Calgary, there's a lot of steps in between to ensure that it stays cold and that the end user is getting
A great
a great product.
Yeah. That is one thing that I was like, I kind of forgot that you had the growlers moment. I remember going into Dad's and like filling up my growler, but I used to live in Unity. So then I would run out of my growler, and it was devastating being in a small town and not being able to have a great product that I always found. Even at the end of the day, it came home and it was perfect. And I have found that always, like even with the transition, because I've been, I guess, apparently an OG Parkerview girl, going from growlers to the glass bottles to the cans now, it's always been just so consistent. So great job. That's a big hurdle. Emma, I would love for you to tell me about how you see the future of fermentation taking off in the food sector. Obviously, we have businesses that have been established, and with the food center just opening up the new facility, what do you see like locally? What do you see nationally? What do you see internationally in the next little while?
It's a tough question. Fermentation is complicated, as all of these ladies have described, that it's a living food product. If you don't have it stored correctly, if you don't have it formulated correctly, things can go pretty crazy pretty quick, and you have a very different product from day 1 to day 10. So fermentation is tricky in the way that there's a lot of different moving parts and there's a lot of science behind it. And especially if you're starting with traditional fermentation and going up that value chain to precision fermentation, where you're seeing lots of, if you follow Food Business News or the Food Diet that I was talking about before, or Food Ingredients First, or any of those publications that are talking about food technology advancements, the precision fermentation space is a little bit like plant-based burgers was, maybe almost 10 years ago now, where you're seeing lots of these startups pop up and they have a lot of really amazing, cool ideas. But the thing is that it's very technical, and the scalability of fermentation is really tricky, which is where the Food Center and our partners with Ag West and Protein Industries Canada and GAP and the university look to evaluate the ecosystem and across Canada, and what do we need to do to fill those gaps? Because if you have a really cool technical piece of technology or IP that you have at the benchtop in a university, to be able to scale from 15 liters up to 500,000 liters to service the ecosystem or to service the market and your consumer market, it's very different from scaling. Fermentation things can explode just like you can with anything else. And so understanding how to navigate that is going to be really tricky, but that's what the Food Center is looking to do, to fill that gap, to take you from the 15 liters up to 15,000 liters and assess how you are going to be able to really make that transition to scale without sacrificing the quality of your product. And I envision there's going to be lots of data analytics, as Amy said. There's going to be a lot of reliance on artificial intelligence, on automation processing, on tracking your sustainability of your processing steps, to be able to understand, where are things going wrong, where are microbes loving what's happening in their fermenters, and where are they not loving it so much, and what are all of these different processing steps that you need to keep in mind.
On the topic of data, on the topic of research, on the topic of innovation, Kara, I know that there's a lot of people in this room from academic backgrounds. This is a new trend that we're seeing out of the University of Saskatchewan, where they're allowing students to move forward into commercialization out of their research, which is incredible to see. Can you tell the crowd a little bit about that process and what that looks like for your journey?
Sure, yeah. It is still, I'd say it's still hard. Even coming out of my master's program, it's like master's itself takes a very long time and a lot of work. And there's specific things that you have to do in order to complete that task. So really what I needed to do was to take a bit of time off or pull back on my master's in order to do this type of work, entrepreneurship. And even though my supervisor was really supportive, it was really just more work for me in order to do that. So I think just understanding that it is an extra load if someone decides to do that, and really respecting there's different parts to it, respecting that they need their time to do research. And sometimes these startups, at least for me, I feel like I've gone slowly. I see other startups really moving and getting sales, but I'm still writing my thesis. And so it feels like I'm moving slowly. And yet I know that what I've been doing in my master's, it has a lot of value, and I really want to complete that well. And so just knowing that it's a process, and then that there are supports and more all the time. Going through Sigma, which is it's been around for a few years now, but it's generally new, and also Opus, which is a new program as well. But there are more supports coming, and people are really trying to bridge that gap between science and entrepreneurship. And I think our ecosystem here in Saskatchewan, it is small. I go visit people at GAP and they talk about Egg West Bio, and I'm still learning that we have a small ecosystem that is tight knit. And so just really learning how to work together and how to use the supports that are there and build each other up and work together. I think that the university is situated in a place that it really can do those things, and it's a role that I think that it wants to and that it needs to take. So just learning how to leverage what we have, and also learning to work together, I think is really important, especially in Saskatchewan, where we come from small towns, and that's how most of us grew up, working with our neighbors and learning how to support each other. I think that is the Saskatchewan spirit. So
amazing. I love that. Especially, I also come from a small town and a farming background, and that Saskatchewan spirit and that community piece, especially with all the people in this room whose faces we see so often. I think sometimes we forget about how great and how strong we are in Saskatchewan because of rooms like this. Amy, expanding your business has come obviously to the transition into aluminum cans. Can you share some of those data points? We've been talking about data points this whole conversation. Can you share some of those data points that indicated to you that you were like, hey, maybe I need to step away from this glass bottle?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I know she's got some good pieces here.
I think for us, we always look at other similar companies, other kombucha companies or other beverage companies that we aspire to be like. And having those companies that are 25 steps ahead of you because they have huge investors or whatnot is nice, because you can kind of look at them from afar and see what they're doing, and it's inspiring. That's how I see it anyway. So yeah, we were in glass and it was going great. It was going good. But there's always issues with glass. It's when we first started, it was glass, plastic lid that we put on ourselves like this, and there was no tamper seal because we couldn't afford it. So we had a sticker that we applied like this. Okay, so you just do that over and over, over and over. And you could only pump out so much product. And we knew that everything had to be systematized at some point when we could financially make it work. So then we went to glass with a plastic lid that had a tamper seal, but also with our hands like this. And that improved. And then we went from glass to a metal enclosure, a ROP cap, and it goes in a machine, and then you take two buttons, two fingers like this, and you press down like this. and it goes, and then it goes off. And before that, you had to label the glass with a semi-automatic labeler. This is probably not semi-automatic, but so there's a lot of steps, right? And when you have a small team, it takes forever to put together a palette of product to get out to the customer. So eventually we got to this point where we knew we had to switch from glass to aluminum. And that's because we weren't able to fulfill our orders anymore. We were getting orders from grocery stores, and we kept shorting their orders. Like, oh, I want this much of peach mango. Okay, well, we can only give you this much because we have to save some of it for this other store. And then it became, okay, which grocery store moves the quickest and can get the most product, and which moves the slowest, and we'll put it on that truck. So it kind of became a good problem, but it was a problem because we didn't want to lose shelf space, and we wanted to outpace our competitors.
Bless you.
So then we decided to switch to cans. And even before we switched to cans, we were doing research on what kind of cans. Do we want to do a sleek can, a slim can, a standard size can? All those little factors we had to take into consideration in terms of standing out from our competitors. What are our non-competitors doing? Or do we want to look more premium? Do we want to look, how do we want to look? So then we started researching machinery. Where can we get this machinery from? We started talking to other producers who were already using cans and asking them how they liked their machinery and the support they were given, or all the other extra materials that you can buy with the canning machine, whether it's like a depalletizer or a collection table. There's all these little add-ons. There's lots of add-ons. Just like if you build a house, but you actually want, you know, big trim piece, that's an add-on, right? Or if you want fancier handles, it's an add-on. So we kept looking and researching, and if you know Tyler and I, we're very particular people. We do a lot of research before we jump into something, to just be as fully informed as we can. And sometimes I feel like that slows us a little bit, but I also remind myself that it's not a rush, and, you know, don't feel too much pressure. It's not a rush. Everything will come as it should. But yeah, then we transitioned to the cans, and it was really just, it's been great since then. We've had to learn a lot about how different it is to use the current machine versus our old machine, and how speed isn't always the answer. I was telling someone earlier, when we first got the canning line set up, it was awesome. We were filling these cans, and they were coming out so quick that they started to collect on the table, and we were trying to like push them back because we couldn't get them in the boxes fast enough. So we've had to slow it down a lot just so that we can still box it. That part is not automated. There's someone that has to box it and tape it. But yeah, I hope that kind of answers it. A bit of our story of how we got here.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking about speed, fermentation and the products that we're talking about today, lots of them are very slow and have very historic and traditional roots. How, Heather, have you continued to grow the company, transition into the company, and ensured that everything has kind of stayed the same along your journey, not compromising that quality? Because I find that always, it doesn't matter if I have this, I don't know if I'm supposed to even have this in my fridge for a month, but it's still great a month later.
Yeah, that has been the very, very hard part of my job. And there are days where I'm just like, what am I doing? But it's, so the big thing for us is now, as we're growing, for our distributors and what we have a 2-week window where their order comes in, and we need to ship it and have it delivered to them either in BC or Ontario within 2 weeks. And the fermentation time takes at least 21 days. Depending upon, again, as Amy mentioned, the temperature outside can affect things. So when we had that nasty ass cold snap, I was losing my mind because we had stuff that was already like bought that needed to be out on a truck pretty much. And it was still fermenting because they were sleepy and they didn't want to get out of bed. So, so it's been really, really tough that way. We almost have to forecast ahead of time and we're getting pretty good in stores that we have been in for a while now. So, I mean, we're getting pretty well known in Saskatchewan, but as we're bringing stores, and the thing is too, we're not bringing on one store at a time. We're bringing on now 10 stores at a time, or like, wow, within the next month, we're bringing on a chain in Ontario for 23 stores. So trying to guess and forecast where that's going to be, and can we get stuff in, and what does that look like in terms of, because we do still jar by hand. So that is, people that it takes a long, again, we've streamlined in a lot of places in order to make sure that our production, from when we took over, our production has increased over 400%. So, and that's all me, yay. But so we do a really good job of finding our bottlenecks and really cleaning them out, making sure that we're getting to where we need to be. But it is a constant juggle trying to explain to people who are not familiar with fermentation why we can't just turn around and produce on demand. They can't just say, oh, hey, we want to change our order to, instead of, one thing of dill pickle, we want to add, this and that and whatever. And we're going, well, no, you can't do that. I can't do that for you. I'm sorry. Like, and they just, they don't necessarily understand. And as Amy mentioned, making sure that they understand it has to go in the fridge. It has to be, otherwise you're going to have fun leaking jars everywhere. And even explaining to some stores in Saskatchewan has been fun in terms of explaining, like, no, there isn't something wrong with our product. There's something wrong with your fridge, because our jars are not exploding anywhere else except just here. And I promise you, they were not exploding anywhere else. But so it does cause a problem for us. It's, again, one of those things that you kind of have to learn as you go. But as we're growing leaps and bounds, it's new problems all the time. But that's what makes my job fun. So that's what gets me out of bed in the morning most days. But so we're really dedicated, though, to making sure that what we do is what we're proud of and what will make our families proud, and that we can, I guess, hold our heads up and be like, hey, this is what we're doing. We're giving it a shot. And that's really all we can do. So we just make sure that all of our I's are dotted and our T's are crossed, and hopefully everything gets to where it's supposed to be. But seriously, shipping off your first pallet, you're kind of like, it's like worse than sending your first kid to kindergarten. Seriously, you're like, please get there, one piece. So, but yeah, it's been fun. So.
At least know when you drop your kid off at kindergarten, they're there in one piece. It always baffles me when you drop the tidbit of, we hand jar everything. Like, there's just so much intention and care put into those great products over there. With that, I would love to open the floor to questions. Again, I am so sorry. We're kind of high maintenance because we're recording this, that we need the questions on the mic. So feel free to take the mic or just yell really loud and I will rephrase or re-ask.
Please, someone ask something.
I'll break this. Can I just stop
Perfect.
here?
Yeah, you can.
Okay. Most of the time for most of my life, I've worked in the nonprofit sector. That is typically connected to trying to build capacity and the nonprofit sector in relation to food, nutrition, agriculture, and often that means kind of goals that are in relation to building capacity at household levels, kind of in community levels. I was trying to kind of frame my question. I don't know if it's the right, maybe Emma, right? I think, or anyone, because I do appreciate small business, but I'm wondering, does our industry benefit from having greater capacity at a household level? Do we benefit from having more people understanding and actually kind of doing some fermentation in their own homes? Obviously, I understand, when you're a small business, it's like, oh, I kind of hope that maybe people would rather buy your product. But I'm curious as to what your perspective would be. Does practicing, it's both the science and the art of fermentation, does that and I'm a kombucha brewer as well. Does that grow? Can that grow your business by more people becoming a bit more aware and even a bit more capable?
Yeah,
Amy, I was just gonna say, yeah, I'm gonna throw that over to Amy because the SCOBY trend was real.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. And, you know, I've heard people ask the same thing, like, you know, maybe you don't want to teach a class or something because then people won't buy your product. And we get a lot of requests for people to teach classes. And we simply don't because we don't have the time. We have 2 young children. One is just turning 5 on Saturday. And so we don't have the time. But we love that people brew kombucha at home, or they tell stories to us about their grandma or grandpa that used to do it, or their friend did it in their garage and they tried it. Those stories are so awesome to hear because it shows that people have a passion. And we have a small tap room in Saskatoon in the front of our facility. And it's a great place where we can talk about things like that and share stories of, you know, well, what flavors are you making? You know, what a lot of people will plant something in their garden, let's say lemon balm, and then put it in the summer, or strawberries or raspberries that they got from the neighbor. And we just love stories like that. It really, I think, I don't look at it as an issue, but more of a community building piece. Yeah. I'd love to hear what you're brewing at
I have
home.
dragon fruit right now.
Oh, really?
A small bottle in my bag that I thought I would share with you.
That's amazing. The pink one or the white insides?
Pink.
I would love to know your
Oh.
transportation process of that. Did it make it here in
Been
one
warmed, I
piece?
guess.
That's really cool.
I can see Rana coming up.
Well, thank you for the presentation. So I'm a food scientist and I studied everything about food production, processing, fermentation, using enzymes, etc. Microbiology. So my concern when I hear people talking about producing food at home or even small scale is, do we really know what's going on our food? And we heard that today, that it's fermentation, so we really don't know what's going on. We need to control all the conditions so we can have a quality control or a consistent quality. So my question is, how do you ensure that the product is consistent and the fermentation is not producing any toxins? Because it's very well known when we produce food through fermentation. Thank you.
Rock, paper, scissors.
I'll answer it quickly, and then you can also show your side.
No.
Yeah, I was gonna say, who's fighting over the data points here?
Thanks for the question. We have our own facility. Heather does too. So apart from us controlling it ourselves in terms of our systems, about what every single ingredient that we purchase, we have to track the supplier, the bin number, everything. But also we have to abide by the compliance and the regulatory of the CFIA, Saskatchewan Health Authority. Who else? Those are basically the two. The CFIA is the more intensive inspection, but we have to abide by their policies. And to be in a grocery store as well, you have to be HACCP certified, have your GMP. So there's all these aspects that we do need to monitor and control should there ever be a recall. So if we had to do a recall, exactly what are you going to do for your recall? That's what the CFIA wants to know. So there are regulations in place that we have to follow and that are important to follow, right? If we're going to put out a product out there that's alive. Go ahead.
Oh, so I can just answer a little bit to that. Kraut and kimchi, and I refer to our stuff as kraut. You might have heard me do that just because we actually, when we went through our CFIA inspection and whatnot, and our certification licensing stuff, we were the first ones to get our sauerkraut inspected and all that other stuff. That's why we're one of the first ones on scene nationally. But we actually had to have a ruling in Ontario. They had to have a huge meeting and blah, blah, blah. And we actually officially can't even call our stuff sauerkraut because sauerkraut is defined as having either vinegar or pasteurization or something else. So if you see something that's refrigerated, it says it's naturally fermented. I'm just going to say if it says sauerkraut on the bottle, it's not. Our stuff actually says fermented cabbage. There are some ways, so there's a lot of things that's coming out in terms of how to properly make it okay. Again, CFIA for our stuff is only concerned in terms of what can grow in it and making sure that it's safe. In terms of quality control, that is not enough. That's what we have found. It just isn't enough. And so the frustration for us is there hasn't been a lot of trailblazers on this in terms of making sure. There's a lot of people who take shortcuts in terms of like, for example, there's some people down in the States, they use a starter. They do a backswash where they can make sure. We are doing what's called wild fermentation, which is the more traditional one, but it's the harder, crankier one that doesn't want to play nice. So we would have liked to have stayed probably just Saskatchewan based, just because it is easier. But we are finding that a lot of people really want our stuff, but we are not trying to outpace what we are sure we can do. We're not willing to kind of make a shortcut in order to make sure that it's always great and always predictable and always. So we do get the odd phone call of, hey, I opened my Fiesta Kraut and it was fizzy, and I then have to talk to them. I promise it's still okay, but if you want me to swap it for you, I will ship you a new one, and then it goes into my fridge and my kids eat it. But so I guess the long story short is it's always constantly evolving. We try to stay really, really on top of all the new research that's coming out. We are in talks with the Fermentation Center, lovely, lovely scientists over there, just because they have different viewpoints in terms of what we can control, what we can't control. We are looking and investing in a nice microscope, and I almost wish we had a microbiologist on staff. If anybody wants to volunteer their time. But yeah, so to answer your question, I guess we're always working on it. We make sure that we are always in compliance of everything. But unfortunately, as we can see with egg recalls and stuff, it's not always top notch. So we try really, really hard. And if there's ever any question, we just ask ourselves whether or not we would feed this to our children, and we go no, and it goes in the garbage. Sadly. So, or chickens. We actually have a chicken farmer we give our stuff to.
There we go. We love that sustainability piece, and right here at home. I'm not seeing anybody running for questions, kind of last call for questions. I'm going to take a note out of Carly Snow's book, and I want a quick 1 second, I'm giving you guys 10 seconds max. What's one piece of advice you would give for someone considering entrepreneurship? Emma, you can go first because Heather's speechless.
The only non-entrepreneur on the panel. I think my biggest piece would be to utilize the ecosystem as best you can. We're really fortunate here in Saskatoon not to plug the food center because I work there, I'm biased, but we have a team of very technical people who dedicate their education and now their career into doing research on a lot of different food products. And so to be able to get that first touch, as Kara mentioned, to work with our scientists to understand, especially in fermentation, understanding the microbiology behind it, the different types of tests you can do. We can help you kind of navigate the thought of, your supply chain, the food safety side, the training that we provide. If you can access those types of services, whether it's through the food center here in Saskatoon or if it's in other food centers across Canada, or utilizing those publicly funded or partially publicly funded, depending who you're working with, resource centers, that can really help you kind of answer those questions you didn't even know you had, or bring those to the forefront when you didn't even know you had them. So work on your utilizing the ecosystem, and also, FEAD would be a great example of that too.
Amy, you're up.
I think number one is it's always going to cost you more than you actually think. Always. And number two, just really quickly, is for us, it has to taste good. Always. If you're making a product, are you delivering on the promise that it's going to taste good? If it says peach mango on the can, it better taste like peach mango. That's because if you don't make it taste good, you won't get a second sale.
Yeah, I'd say too, like, iterate. Don't be scared to like put it out there, get feedback, and then try again. Like, all feedback is good feedback, and then just keep going and keep going.
Trying to think of like what one thing I would want to say to somebody, especially
It's
after.
okay, Heather. You can have two.
I guess my big thing is I would say like lean in. A lot of people being on the forefront in terms of this has taught us a lot. Particularly, I think we both try not to have I call it crisis of faith day, where we go, why did we even start to try to do this? We talk each other out of it, but because I think the big thing is as an entrepreneur, as pushing your company to grow to and always trying to be at the forefront, you are only seeing the bad stuff over and over and over again. You're not seeing all the good stuff. And sometimes I think you have to kind of step back and go and look at and go, where did we come from? And I mean, when we really look at, how much we've grown over the last 2 years, we have to go, oh, okay, we're doing okay. But I mean, I came into work on Tuesday and it was fire after fire after fire. So it can be exhausting and it can be really tiring. I guess it's very, very tiring, but it's very, very fulfilling. Honestly, it's wonderful to get those small wins, to have your kids look at you and be like really proud of the fact of seeing your stuff on the shelf and telling their friends that they like sauerkraut. That's fantastic. But I would say the big thing is just, if you're going to do it wholeheartedly. Just go whole heart and lean into it and enjoy the ride, because it's a ride.
2 feet in. I agree. And I would say that's something that this entire panel has done across the span of their entrepreneurial journeys, is it's been 2 feet in. So with that, thank you everyone for coming out. Thank you to Amy and Joanne, Agwis Bio, and Prairie Food Link for having us, for the great partnership, and for the amazing continued collaboration. Joanne, do you have any announcements?
No, not today.
No,
We're ready all to get in.
amazing. Yeah, feel free to grab some product, come ask questions, stick around.